Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you for stopping by. My name is Marianne and I love reading books and I'd like to share my love for reading books as well. So for today, I thought I would do my September wrap-up. Now, for the month of September, I unwillingly joined a readathon apparently. I was unaware that September is also Sci-Fi September, so I ended up reading sci-fi the entire month. I didn't plan on it, but yeah, that's what ended up happening. So I read a total of 6 books, all of them science fiction classics. So without further ado, I'm just going to do a little mini reviews of all 6 books that I've read so far in September. So let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of September would be A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep earlier this year. Absolutely loved it. So I wanted to read another Philip K. Dick. Now, in A Scanner Darkly, there is a drug called Substance D. Its street name is known as Death, and it is considered the most dangerous drug on the black market. It ends up destroying the link between the right and left hemispheres of the brain, so it leads to disorientation, further deterioration, and eventually irreparable brain damage. And we are following an undercover narcotics agent known as Bob Arctor. And he is tasked with discovering who is the main supplier for Substance D. However, in order to go undercover, he has to use Substance D. And eventually, as we continue on with the book, we see how he actually becomes dependent on the drug himself, just as much as the addicts he is actually supposed to be monitoring. Now, I really enjoyed Scanner Darkly, but it did take a while for me to actually really get to enjoy it. Philip K. Dick's writing has been considered or described as cluttered, and I think that's really seen here in this book in particular, but I think it really does add to the story in a sense, or it fits the story better, because a lot of the book does follow Bob Arctor, hanging around his friends or, the addicts he is supposed to be monitoring, and just following a lot of their paranoid conversations or their paranoid thought processes, basically. It was towards the end, like towards the last 1/3, where I really begun to enjoy it, because we really clearly get to see how, through the effects of Substance D, how Bob Arctor begins to disassociate, himself. He begins to disassociate him as an undercover narcotics agent and then his persona. And it comes to a point where he can't distinguish between the two, like they're two different people. And the ending basically is pretty heartbreaking. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is pretty sad. I would recommend Scanner Darkly. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It took a while for me to get into it, but overall, I enjoyed it. Following A Scanner Darkly, I picked up Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. This is the same author of The Man Who Fell to Earth, which I read a few months ago and really enjoyed. So I decided to pick up his other one in the SF Masterworks collection. This one is even rated higher than The Man Who Fell to Earth. So the premise of Mockingbird is pretty hard to explain easily. It's very reminiscent of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. So in this future, humanity, when it reached the peak of its advancement, enacted certain decisions in the goal or in the pursuit of humanity's, comfort and ease. But what this led to is mankind becoming stagnant. They're illiterate. They don't want to deal with their emotions. They just pop pills whenever they feel bad. And everyone is in the pursuit of their own individual, their own individual desires, basically. And we're following 3 characters in 3 perspectives. So the first one is Spofford, who is an android, and his one desire is basically to die, but he's programmed not to. And then we're following Paul Bentley, who is a man who has taught himself how to read, and then Mary Lou, who is sort of an anomaly within society. So we're following those 3 perspectives. And I gotta say, I loved Mockingbird. I love this book. I absolutely adore it. It's such an uplifting novel. It's a book about rediscovering humanity. The importance of literacy and how literacy can, not only be uplifting, but how it can help us reconnect or, reignite our human emotions, our raw human emotions. It's a book about, falling in love with reading and falling in love with another person, and it's It's beautiful, and the world seems reborn through the eyes of Paul Bentley, who I would argue is the main character of this book. Initially, you think it's Spofford because the book starts off with Spofford, but this really is Paul Bentley's story. It is him learning how to become human, and it's a really beautiful novel. It's definitely one of those science fiction books where it's less on the science concepts and more on making a statement on the human condition. And I think those are my favorite sci-fi books, and Mockingbird is a good example of it. I give this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adore it. And now we move on to my favorite book of the month, and that would be Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Not only is this my favorite book of the month, it's a new favorite book. I cried after this. I'm not gonna lie, I actually cried. And it has a lot of acclaim. You know, people say it's a must read. It's recommended for those who are not really into science fiction, who don't reach for it a lot, and yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Please read Flowers for Algernon. It was amazing. Like I said, it made me cry in the best possible way. So in this novel, we're following Charlie Gordon, who has the IQ of 68. It's pretty low, and because of this, he is the butt of many people's jokes. One day, he is chosen basically to be the test subject of this experiment that is meant to increase the IQ of the human being. He goes through it, and it works. He actually gradually becomes smarter and even a genius. And it turns out, you know, Charlie's wish to be smart is, you know, granted. However, Algernon, who was the mouse that they tested on before moving on to a human subject, begins to fade away and die. And now Charlie has to reconcile with the fact that his triumph may have been, you know, very short-lived, and that he too may follow the same fate as Algernon. Similar to Mockingbird, this is definitely a science fiction novel that focuses more on the human condition rather than, you know, all the heavy science topics. And it really is a beautiful novel. And what I love about it so much is the main character, is Charlie Gordon. In a way, his story is heartbreaking, but it's also inspiring, because this is a man who desperately, fervently wants to learn. He wants to become smarter. And a large part of it is because he feels that he will gain acceptance if he becomes smarter. And throughout the novel, once he begins to, you know, his IQ begins to increase, he slowly begins to regain memories from his past and all the not so happy memories within it. And it's really also a book that is a powerful reminder about human dignity and how every human must be treated with respect, deserves respect. Heartbreaking, but absolutely inspiring. Please go check it out. After reading Flowers for Algernon, I needed a pick-me-up book, anything to distract me from the sadness. So I got More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon, and we're following a cast of 5 characters. So it's an idiot boy, a runaway girl, a severely retarded baby, and then twin girls with a vocabulary of 2 words between them. And it's about them coming together and becoming something that is not really human, more than human, if you will. The first thing I have to say about this book is that it has the most beautiful prose in a science fiction novel I've ever come across. It's like poetry. Some of it is poetry at some point. So yeah, that part really stood out to me, so I really like that. Now this book is split up into 3 portions. There's The Fabulous Idiot, Baby is 3, and then Morality. And within each break, there is a time jump. So with every new part that you get into, you're introduced to a new character and a new setting. I thought that was well executed. I thought it was well structured, well paced. Though I do have to admit, and the reason why this book is like only 4.5 out of 5 stars, is that the last part, Morality, was kind of rushed at the end. I'm not gonna lie. But other than that, I greatly enjoyed this. You know, the plot kept me hooked. I felt all the characters were distinct and fascinating. All of them were, you know, fairly fleshed out. So yeah, overall, More Than Human was good. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend that you give this one a go. So I was riding high this Sci-Fi September. 4 science fiction novels passed by, and I adored all of them. They were either 4 to 4.5 to 5 stars, and I was loving it. And then I reached a pitfall, and that is with The Book of Skulls by Robert Silverberg. Oh dear Lord, this book. Oh my gosh, how do I explain it? This has a very good, interesting premise. We're following 4 college roommates on a cross-country road trip to Arizona. One of them has discovered a manuscript within their university library called the Book of Skulls, and it tells of a cult that is the key to immortality, and that they will give you immortality. However, there's a catch. You have to come in a group of 4, and only 2 of you will be allowed into the cult and receive immortality. One of you has to be murdered, and the other has to commit suicide. Fairly interesting. However, I'm just gonna say right now, I'm gonna rant a bit. I know I did a review, but I'm just gonna rant. This might be the most egregious example of false advertising I've ever come across. This is part of the SF Masterworks collection. I don't know why. This is pitched as horror sci-fi, and it's not horror, and it ain't sci-fi. It wasn't scary, and it's speculative at best. I'm just gonna say, okay? So if you're interested in this book, I'm just letting you know that it isn't horror sci-fi. It's more of a philosophical character study. I'm just letting you know that. The greatest sin that this book committed was the fact that it was just boring, at least to me. Now, the first half of this book is dedicated to them getting to the temple. So basically, this is meant to be time for character exploration, character development. But I wouldn't call what happens in the first half any of those things, because if anything, it wasn't really character development. It was more these 4 characters wallowing within their stereotypes. 90% of this book, they did not feel like fully fleshed characters. They felt like caricatures of their designated ethnic, sexual, and social economic, niches within society. Silverberg does not let one page go without having to remind you that Eli is Jewish, Ned is gay, Oliver is a country boy, Timothy is a privileged Anglo-Saxon. He takes these surface level traits and then just inflates it to such an absurd degree that they just come off as cartoonish. And to be fair, once we reach the 100 mark and they finally get to the temple, like, the one thing that you can take from all of that was that they're just off-putting people. I did enjoy a few things, and that was scattered amongst the pages that were filled with pretentious inner dialogue and a gratuitous amount of sex scenes. There were a lot of interesting philosophical, reflections that were going on, all about life and death, faith, the idea that humanity has destroyed life's mysteries through stark rationalism. I really enjoyed that. The last 50 pages are the best, in my opinion. That's really where the tension really hikes up when the climax hits. So, yeah. Like I said, though, last 50 pages were good, but aside from those and a few philosophical reflections, I was just pretty much bored. The last book I tackled in Sci-Fi September was The Gods Themselves by Isaac Asimov. The story follows in the year 2100, in which humanity has discovered a way to obtain free, accessible energy. And this is through the invention of something called the electron pump. The electron pump works by exchanging materials with a parallel universe, or the para-universe. And however, this exchange between the 2 universes causes an imbalance within the cosmos, which then, could lead to the explosion of the sun. So we're following several different groups of people. Some are people, some are not. But anyway, we're following several groups of individuals that are trying to prevent this from happening, basically. So yeah. Now, The Gods Themselves is split into 3 portions, similar to More Than Human. And the second portion, which follows aliens, is definitely my favorite one. I feel that I was the most emotionally invested in this portion. And especially it's weird because like the 2 parts that book ended actually feature humans, but it's the one with aliens where I felt actually the most emotionally invested in. Overall though, this was well paced, well structured, very entertaining, very fascinating, and yeah, just a prime good example of a science fiction novel, so would recommend. So those were all the books that I read in Sci-Fi September. Hope you guys enjoy, and please let me know down in the comments, what science fiction novel would you recommend me? Did you enjoy, have you read any of the ones that I mentioned here? And yeah, take care and thanks for stopping by.